You probably remember this scene from Jurassic Park. A cute, dog-sized dinosaur steps out of the jungle mist. It hisses, fans out a frilly neck like a deadly umbrella, then spits black venom straight into a man's face. That was Hollywood's Dilophosaurus, a monster made for the big screen. But here's the thing, none of that was real. Not the size, not the frill, not the venom. Well, sure, it's a movie, and movies take creative liberties. But even by movie standards, this one went off the rails. And for the paleontologist community, they weren't upset because the movie made Dilophosaurus too scary. They were stunned because the real animal was far more impressive and far more terrifying than the movie ever showed. So let's put aside the movie monster and dive into what Dilophosaurus really was. Dilophosaurus wasn't just a dinosaur, it was a glimpse into the evolutionary blueprint of future killers. It lived roughly 193 million years ago, during the early Jurassic, a time when Earth's ecosystems were just beginning to reorganize after the Triassic extinction. Forests were thick with ferns and towering conifers, and mammals were still tiny, nocturnal creatures hiding in the underbrush. But above them, predators were evolving, fast, and Dilophosaurus was among the first truly large carnivores to dominate the land. Dilophosaurus stretched over 20 feet long, weighed nearly 1,000 pounds, and yet its entire body was built for agility. Its frame was long and lean, the dinosaurian equivalent of a greyhound mixed with a crocodile. Unlike the heavy, bone-crushing design of later theropods like T-Rex, Dilophosaurus's body was made for speed and precision. Its hollow bones reduced weight, and its long, muscular legs suggest it could run fast, likely chasing down or ambushing prey with quick bursts of motion. Its arms, often overlooked, were strong and flexible, ending in sharp, hooked claws. Unlike T-Rex's tiny forelimbs, Dilophosaurus could likely use its arms to grasp struggling prey, hold it in place, or even deliver slashing wounds. The skull of Dilophosaurus is one of the most distinctive and misunderstood features in all of dinosaur paleontology. At first glance, it looks almost fragile, long, narrow, and crowned with two twin crests that arc above the eyes like curved blades. To the average person, this looks like a flaw in nature's design, until it isn't. Like many theropods, Dilophosaurus evolved a series of fenestrae, natural openings in the skull, which served multiple purposes. First, they reduced the weight of the head dramatically, allowing for faster movement and better balance when hunting. These fenestrae also allowed room for muscle attachment, which meant that while the skull itself wasn't built for crushing like a T-Rex, it still packed a punch in terms of speed and cutting force. In essence, it was like a saber, not a hammer. Dilophosaurus had around 12 to 18 teeth on each side of the upper jaw and 11 to 15 on the lower, although the exact number could vary slightly among individuals. These teeth were long, curved backward, and laterally compressed, meaning they were thin side to side but tall and blade-like. Each tooth featured fine serrations along the front and back edges, similar to a steak knife or shark tooth, designed to slice rather than crush. The teeth near the front of the upper jaw were noticeably longer and more spaced out, which some paleontologists believe helped it grasp and pierce slippery prey, like small reptiles or fish. These front teeth also had larger serrations compared to the back teeth, giving it a grappling hook effect during the initial bite. Its jaw hinge sat relatively high and forward on the skull, giving it an action similar to scissors, closing with speed and precision rather than brute force. Unlike the later T-Rex, which relied on crushing power up to 12,800 pounds per square inch, Dilophosaurus likely had a much weaker bite force. Recent estimates suggest around 1,100 to 1,500 pound per square inch, roughly comparable to a modern alligator. But what it lacked in strength, it made up for with speed and technique. The teeth's curvature meant that once Dilophosaurus latched on, any struggling prey would get dragged deeper into the mouth rather than pulled away. Combined with slashing head movements, this likely allowed it to inflict deep lacerations, letting prey bleed out before the final kill, a hunting style akin to modern Komodo dragons or big cats. Its teeth were part of a broader evolutionary strategy: fast in, fast out. Strike quickly, cause maximum damage, and then retreat to let blood loss and shock do the rest. That made Dilophosaurus an ideal ambush predator, and one of the first dinosaurs to combine speed, slicing, and smarts in such a refined way. Now the crests. These arched structures, thin, semicircular bones running from just in front of the eyes toward the top of the skull, are unique among early theropods. They were too delicate for combat. A single blow from another dinosaur would have shattered them. That tells us they likely weren't used for headbutting or defense. Instead, paleontologists believe they served a social or sexual function. Like attracting mates, the crests could have been brightly colored in life, signaling health and genetic fitness. Or in a world filled with similarly shaped predators, the crests helped Dilophosaurus recognize its own kind. Or, and this is probably the last or, like a frilled lizard, the crests were used for intimidating other creatures. These crests are a perfect example of evolutionary experimentation. In the early Jurassic, theropods were diversifying quickly, trying out various body plans and visual signals. The crests of Dilophosaurus were part of this wave, not yet refined like the horns of Carnotaurus or the display feathers of later raptors, but already showing signs of complex social behavior and sexual selection. So forget the idea of a tiny, spitting sideshow monster. The real Dilophosaurus was an early experiment in apex predation, and for millions of years, it worked. As a member of the family Dilophosauridae, Dilophosaurus represents a transitional form in theropod evolution, bridging the gap between smaller, more primitive carnivores of the late Triassic like the Colophysis and Herrerasaurus, and the later, larger, more specialized theropods like Allosaurus and eventually Tyrannosaurus in the late Jurassic and Cretaceous. The first fossils of Dilophosaurus were discovered in 1940 by paleontologist Sam Wells in the Kayenta Formation, located in northeastern Arizona. Wells's initial find included an almost complete skeleton, featuring a well-preserved skull with the iconic twin crests, parts of the spine, pelvis, and limbs. This holotype specimen was the foundation for defining Dilophosaurus weatherilli, the only species officially recognized in the genus. Back in 1993, when Jurassic Park roared into theaters, Dilophosaurus was still poorly understood. Fossil records were fragmentary, and much of the animal's biology was still open to interpretation. Its skull, in particular, was long and slender, which led early paleontologists to suspect that it might have had a relatively weak bite compared to its later theropod cousins. Spielberg's creative team saw an opportunity here. The perceived fragility of the skull became a canvas for invention. If it wasn't physically dominant, then it had to be dangerous in a different, more cinematic way. That's where the venom and the frill came in. Rather than depict it as a fast 20-foot ambush predator, which science now tells us it was, they miniaturized it. This allowed the dinosaur to fit within a tighter, more suspenseful scene. And to compensate for its downsized physicality, they layered it with fantastical features drawn not from paleontology, but from modern reptiles like the Australian frilled lizard and the spitting cobra. Visually, it was brilliant. The sudden unfurling of the neck frill, the unsettling hiss, and the acidic spit added a jolt of horror and surprise. But scientifically, it was somehow a fiction built on top of uncertainty. Kindly like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And as always, I'm DM. See you in the next one.